Welcome to the May episode of Feast TV, where we bring the pages of the May issue to life. Now, this episode is absolutely focused on Missouri and Illinois wines. First, we're going to head to Charleville in St. Genevieve County and meet a winemaker who's also a brewer. We're going to head downtown and meet the couple behind Hammer in Hand. They're importing Indian antiques and refurbished furniture. Then we're going to head over to the wine merchant in Clayton and meet Simon Lair, who's going to pair Missouri wines with his amazing cheeses. After that, we're going to head to Home Wine Kitchen in Maplewood, where Chef Cassy Vires is going to teach us how to make yogurt. We're going to wrap things up in Herman, where we're going to get a behind the scenes on the history of Missouri wine. In between each one of the segments, I'm going to be making a steamed mussel dish that includes vignole. Cooking with wine is a really great way to enhance flavors, and because this is obviously the Missouri wine issue, using a vignole actually from Augusta is it's going to be a really fun way to incorporate Missouri wine into this entire episode. Now, vignole is similar to Gewürztraminer. It has a spicy and floral characteristic. It's perfect for Asian food. There's an emerging trend in wineries starting to produce beer and spirits. So before I start the cooking demonstration, I want to introduce you to the folks at Charleville, where they're making wine and brewing beer.
I am a brewer at heart, and that's really where I began in the beverage industry. When the small tasting room first opened up, they're only serving 3 wines here. And you had a lot of people coming in who wanted a little bit more. So they wanted to start their own brewery. They wanted to pour their own beer. Well, winemaking is drastically different by the means of the raw ingredients. It's not clean, it's being crushed and pressed, and it's naturally sanitizing by its own acidity. Beer is everything is trying to be sterile and clean as possible. Wine can be a bit filthy, but the process that carries through, the wine becomes elegant and beautiful by the end of its life. Beer is a much faster process. From inception, you can have a glass of beer in 14 days, very easily. The beer here is definitely the lighter side of our business. We like to have a lot of fun with the beer naming. As you can see, we're a little cramped in here, so the wine tanks are being pulled out to make room for the beer tanks, so making the need for the larger building across the way so that this space could be devoted back to a winery. This right here is our small bottling line, which is another thing that we actually built ourselves. I build these small bottling machines for other breweries, and it's another sort of aspect of our business. Right here is our Norton vineyard, but at the very bottom of it, if you can see the tall posts across down there, that's our hops. We grow them and we make a fresh hop beer every year. As new wineries opened up in our area, we started to see a lot more interest in Missouri wine and St. Genevieve in general. Each individual winery in the area offers something unique. Some offer, have restaurants, some have a natural cave, which is beautiful to go to in the summertime. This was a retirement project for Jack and Joel. They began growing their fruit, and their idea was just to sell it to other wineries. Then they began, thinking, well, let's make our own wine. And so they produced a few bottles of wine, and then they decided, well, let's open a tasting room with the public. And so it sort of blossomed through there.
So I'm going to start the broth for our steamed mussels, and the main ingredient in this broth is the vignole. So we're going to do about 1.5 cups. This recipe, by the way, is from Eric Jacobs, who's one of our key contributors. He makes a lot of great recipes for us. We're also going to do a piece of ginger. Now, I want to show you a trick. If you just take your spoon, rub it along the ginger, see how that just comes right off? So we're going to cut a good sized chunk, about 3/4 of an inch to an inch, and then we're just going to smash it, release some of the oils. The next ingredient that we're going to add to our broth is lemongrass. Asian specialty stores have it frozen. Thai food is characterized by a balance between salty, sweet, bitter, and spicy, and so here is the sweet element. This is actually a chestnut honey. It's extremely rich in flavor. You can tell by the dark color just how rich it is. These little chilies are bird's eye chilies. This is what you'll find kind of throughout Thai cooking. They're extremely spicy. You don't need a lot to impart that heat that you're looking for. And you just smash them again, just to kind of release whatever is inside of that pepper. So this is going to reduce for a while until it's maybe just a couple of tablespoons. I'm gonna go ahead and soak my mussels, and we're gonna take a slight break from Missouri wine country, and we're going to introduce you to the couple that runs Hammer in Hand in downtown St. Louis.
What I find is the best antiques and what people really gravitate to are coming out of India.
We love the color. We get typically, most of our pieces come out of Jodhpur, India, which is the blue city. We know a lot now about the culture and the history of the pieces, and it's just our knowledge, and
I think a lot of it is, what we love. I think, we really do pick from our heart.
It's definitely, we have a lot of great pieces that will work really well for especially restaurants. And we've already had some restaurants that have our pieces in there, like Basso.
These pieces are multifunctional, and so they can easily be used in, many different ways. These are a typical Indian side table or a typical Indian eating table. This wouldn't be your typical piece that you could use in your home as a table, but you might use it as a, to hold a centerpiece on your dining table, or you might use it as a little step for your dog to jump in your bed, or whatever. Lots of different things that you can do. I love these. These are cool too. These have been pretty popular for us. These are now these are a little newer. They're obviously not real old, but these are our bread pans. So these were from a factory, a bread making factory, and I guess the bread making factory went out of business, and these came on the market, and we snatched them up. We thought they were really fun.
People have come in and they bought them for to hang in bars, and they'll put like little cups and
shot glasses, or hang in your home for little keepsakes.
A couple people had that idea, so apparently either that's been done before or it's just a great idea.
Yeah, so lots of cool stuff like that. We definitely see a trend toward leaving things as original as possible.
Now, with every piece, not only do we tell them scrape it down or replace it with glass, now we're like, see the sticker, please leave that, don't remove this.
Yeah. I think that's something that people will always enjoy. People will always enjoy historical type of pieces, things that have a history. One of the things that you'll see quite often in these antique and vintage cabinets is you'll see an original facade. So when you open one of these cabinets, what you're going to find inside is you're going to find some repurposed wood back and sides. And the reason for that is many times in India they were building these cabinets in poured concrete homes, and they would actually take the whole cabinet and slide it into the niche in the wall, and the actual facade and the lip of the cabinet would keep it from sliding behind or sliding back into the wall too far.
And people often ask us, how easy is it to get into this? I think that, as restaurant owners probably know, even if you like food or you can cook, you can't just open a restaurant. If you like furniture and you think it's cool, you can't just go buy it and be as successful. It does take time to learn about the pieces. And
I know for sure that we are starting to veer away from a disposable culture. And I think people really want something that's going to last forever, and obviously these pieces have already been around for 50 to 200 years. As the world trends toward conservancy, they want that type of historical and also something that's going to last forever, and these pieces will.
So while our broth is reducing, because we only want a few tablespoons when we're finished, I'm gonna go ahead and finish up a little bit of the mise en place for the rest of the dish. We're going to juice and also zest this lemon, and if you've never zested a lemon, it's actually very easy to do. Just go to any store and get one of these handy dandy microplanes, and the trick is to not get any of the pith. So you don't want to push too hard, and really what you're looking for is just a very light stroke that will take off just that top layer, because the pith is bitter, and what you want are those volatile oils, those essential oils that are inside of the skin of the lemon. Now we're also going to go ahead and juice this. I have my handy dandy reamer. Now I'm going to show you a trick. There's actually a really easy way to chop shallots. Obviously, peeling these guys sometimes can be a pain, but cut the end off, making sure that the root end is intact. Then all you're gonna do is chop it in half. You're gonna peel this back, then you're gonna lay it flat on your cutting board. And you're going to take your knife and you run it through horizontally. Again, not going through the root ends. So everything is still, you can see that these layers are still intact. Then all you're gonna do is you're going to cut straight down like this, whatever the size is that you want your shallot to be, your mince to be. And then you just take your knife, run it through. You have the root left, and then all of this is perfectly minced. Way easier than trying to peel the whole thing, chop the whole thing. This will make quick work of your shallots. So while I'm chopping the rest of these, I want to introduce you to Simon Lair over at the Wine Merchant. He's going to show you how to pair Missouri wine with some amazing cheese. Take me through, first off, like Norton. It's the steak grape.
Right.
If I come to you and say, I'm doing a big bottle of Norton with a lamb and a steak, how are you going to guide me?
Just like with any of the French varietals or any of the Italian varietals, it's the weight of the grape. So on a big grape like Norton, you go with bigger, fuller flavored cheeses.
Okay.
With lighter whites or lighter reds, you go with a little bit lighter, milder flavor. Most importantly, when you're first delving in, it's finding things that you just like the flavor of. Most people that walk up to my cheese case or to the wine shop in general haven't tasted most of our products. They have no idea. They've got a brief knowledge of what they grew up with and the difference between a brie and a cheddar and some very rudimentary ideas of what they like. But oftentimes when they ask for something here at the cheese counter, what we think of as a cheddar or a brie is very different from what other people think of as a cheddar and a brie. What we try and do is tasting. As soon as you give me an idea, just start tasting. We ask a couple of rudimentary questions. Do you looking for something soft? Are you looking for something hard? Are you looking for something mild? Are you looking for something potent?
But what you allow people to do is experience things paired with your knowledge, which I think is the best way to learn. I mean, you can just come in and...
It makes my job really easy. Once you've done the hard part of picking out the wine, or that you like these products already, it's easy to come up to me and say, I'd like to pair something with this. We just start tasting, because initially it's all about just tasting, finding things that you like. But if you don't necessarily like everything in the case to begin with, then it becomes very difficult. Because,
well, I'm easy, because I like everything.
Well, we appreciate that. And so if we're looking for a nice Norton, we've got a number of different selections. Mm-hmm. My favorite right now would be this Puchta.
Okay.
It's a classic Norton, so you get a lot of those chocolatey, rich, big, deep blackberry flavors to it. And by blackberry, I mean blueberry, but any of those dark colored berry flavors to it. So the first thing I'm going to show you is actually something we're really excited about, which is a new Missouri cheese.
Oh, great.
What you really notice about this cheddar, too, this has a real sweet buttercream flavor to it, but it still has that big sharpness to it. So big, potent cheese, and it really accentuates, the texture of the wine really accentuates that crystallized protein that's in the cheese as well. So again, you get that faux saltiness from the crystallization, plus there actually is real salt in there, but the fruitiness of the wine helps pull that out.
Oh my gosh, I'm already so happy.
This is the Dunbarton Blue. This is a cow's milk blue from Wisconsin that is essentially a blued cheddar.
It's gorgeous.
And so, the wheels themselves have a great striation throughout them. And again, this could also be part of that cheddar tasting, because this is technically a blued cheddar.
Oh my gosh.
And that's how we sort of like to build tastings, is we find something that people are interested in, and then we can take them in a number of different directions.
This is a really nice, balanced blue where you get some of that funk, but then, like you were saying, that kind of salty, crystallized texture, the kind of dry texture of the cheddar cheese.
Exactly, comes through. And this is one of our favorite blues to bring people to that maybe say, I don't like blues. I've never had a blue cheese that I like. Because this has those cheddar background notes to it, it starts people off with something that's a little bit more familiar, and then it starts to bring in those mild blue flavors without being over the top. The reason this one works so well is somebody comes into me tonight and says, it's going to be gorgeous tonight. we're going to have, we want something for sitting out on the deck tonight with a glass of wine and some cheese that's just going to be perfect. And it's really going to become our dinner. That cheese is just showing perfect today. That's what real brie should taste like.
Oh, it's so good. It's funky, and it's salty, and it's creamy, and oh my God.
There's a little bit of white mushroom going on in there, a nice eggy texture, that big buttery richness. I mean, it goes all over the place, and it's an
a great
experience.
pair with this.
It is. It's a big,
This
with
kind
the
of
big
cuts
wine.
through.
That's what you're looking for. So the tannins in the wine of a big red wine, and the fat in the cheese is what you're looking for in this.
So what other soft cheeses?
Another great soft cheese to do. This is a very rare cheese. We usually only see once or twice a year. It's a cow's milk cheese that they then make a lambic beer on the property, a wild beer that they make on the property, and they wash the rind of this cheese as it ages out with that lambic, and then wrap it in spruce bark. As opposed to using natural rinds, which develop the microflora and fauna on the outside of them, these ones, because they wash with the beer, develop very distinct bacteria on the outside of the rinds, which are very intensely flavored, but keep all of the molds off of it as well.
You're not kidding.
Yeah, very big, very potent, very strong. And really you're using the wine to cut through the flavors of that cheese and to help moderate some of the flavors of that cheese.
I think for my Norton party, I really loved that first brie. I thought that was outstanding.
It's just spot on, and that's
This
the
guy.
cheese that's showing the best today.
Yeah, I would choose that one. And then to kind of round out the selection, I think I would probably go with the Flores Truckle. I really loved that grassy flavor to it.
And I think that's a great way to go too, especially if it is a party and you're having a lot of people over. This is a much more accessible cheese.
Even if it's a party for one.
Even if it's a party for one. But this is definitely much more of an accessible cheese for people. They're flavors that they know, but it takes them in a little bit different direction. Whereas the brie is definitely more distinctive, fuller flavor, and may not be everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
But because you were here and tried it, you get to choose the one that you like the best.
That's right. Typically mussels, which are really quite inexpensive and also considered highly sustainable because generally they're farmed in a very clean way. Once you soak them for about 20 minutes, you need to kind of go through and clean them. Any mussels that are open, that don't close when you tap, just discard those. You're not gonna be using them. So this is the beard. It's not gonna hurt you if you eat it, it's just gonna be unpleasant. You're going to debeard him. So you just grab the beard and yank toward the hinge, and there you go, it's done. I'm gonna add a little bit of lemon juice, just a couple of tablespoons, and now all we're gonna do is strain it and reserve it for when we're finishing our mussels. I'm gonna go ahead and sweat these shallots and garlic, and we're gonna get in the kitchen with Cassy Vires at Home Wine Kitchen and learn how to make yogurt.
I'm Cassy Vires of Home Wine Kitchen, and we're here today to talk about this month's tech school where we made fresh yogurt. It's really easy and quick to make. It doesn't take a lot of active time. The product is fantastic, especially compared to what you could buy in the stores, so I highly encourage people to make their own yogurt at home. Okay, so the first thing you need to make yogurt is yogurt to start. And I have here a little bit of yogurt we've made in-house and also some store-bought yogurt. The store-bought yogurt, this is a Greek yogurt as well. It's thin, it's got a fair amount of water on top. The fresh yogurt that we've made, it's got a little bit more thickness to it, a little less water. Both of them are gonna have really similar flavors, tart, fresh, creamy, but the thickness is something that you can also control by how long you cook it, and if you would like it thicker, to even strain it afterwards to get some of the water out. So the first thing you need to do is heat 4 cups of whole milk to 180 degrees. You want to do that over low heat, stirring constantly so that a skin doesn't form. Once you reach 180, you want to remove it from heat and allow it to cool down to 110 degrees. If you want to speed up the cooling process, you can use an ice bath, or you can just let time take its course to get back down to 110 degrees. So once you reach 110 degrees, ladle a little bit of the milk into a separate bowl and add 2 tablespoons of the yogurt. Stir that together and add it back into your mixture. And And then you want to ladle the milk into some airtight jars. Now, if there was a difficult part to make yogurt, this would be it, but this is incredibly simple as well. You have to find a way to hold the yogurt for 6 hours at 110 to 120 degrees. Now, if you have a yogurt maker or a sous vide machine, this becomes very simple, but if you don't, just a cooler will do the trick for you. You're going to put your jars into the bottom of the cooler, and then add some water that's at about 120 degrees. Close your cooler up, and 6 hours later, you'll have fresh yogurt. If you're looking for a fun application for your fresh yogurt you just made, check out this month's issue of Feast Magazine for our Tech School column, where we have a great recipe for tzatziki. We serve that here at Home Wine Kitchen on our lunch menu with a little bit of herb-cured salmon belly, beet chips, and caper berries.
And now, the star of the show, we're going to add a little bit over a half a cup of wine. Get it up to high heat and let it start to simmer. Now we're going to go ahead, put in our mussels. Yep, that guy, he was open, I tapped on him, he closed, so that means he's good to go. The reserved broth and a good handful of the cilantro. While this is cooking, let's take a trip to Herman and learn about the history of Missouri wine.
Well, welcome to Deutschheim. This stands for German home. And this would have been the location of an 1857 winery known as the Straley House Winery. So here you have the actual Straley press. So this is what they would have used to crush the grapes. And of course you crush them, and there would have been a device that allowed you to circle this around and to crush it down, and then the juice flows around the perimeter. And there it goes by gravity. It's fed down through the floor to the cellar that's about 20 feet below us. There's probably 100 house wineries like this in the Herman area. One of the things that happened here in Herman was when it was initially established, it was established as a commercial city. And in fact, they had ideas it might even compete with St. Louis. They had big dreams. But in any event, it was challenged agriculturally because it's rugged, rocky terrain. But they did notice that the native grape did very well. A number of the settlers were also from southern Germany and from Switzerland on the Rhine, where they were familiar with wine production.
The history of my family starts basically way back in prior to 1830s. They were Bavarian winemakers and butchers over in the small town of Oberkatzau, Bavaria. They just said, bye, see ya. Picked up stakes and moved to Missouri. They amassed about 1,000 acres and started growing grapes, and that was the first part, putting in the acres, clearing the ground, putting in a farm system, and then growing vineyards. My great-great-grandmother and my great-great-great-grandmother all kept a diary, and they wrote 3 to 5 sentences a day on what was going on every day, and that's how we got most of the history on our property. The Adam Puchta Winery is currently the oldest continuously owned family winery in the United States.
Others were from northern Germany that had no background in wine. But that actually worked to their advantage because they didn't have any preconceived ideas. And so they tried new things, they tried new varieties, and many of the early ones were the Isabella, the Norton, which is very well suited to this area, and we have Norton grapes out on the arbor around back, which is from the 1870s. And also the Catawba was one of the very early grapes, and then of course the Concord later. But this was the way they sustained themselves. So the newspaper began talking about it and literally saying, every week you're going to hear about this because we should be getting into viniculture. And so the town fathers actually started an early program where you could buy wine lots at an advantage price, and then they would have had the whole town with hundreds of acres of grapes. They sold 600 wine lots that way. You know,
the history of Herman has so many wineries. Folklore has it there were 61 wineries and over 5,000 acres of grapevines, and everybody was growing grapes and making wine.
Starting in the mid-1840s, they did have good production. They were mainly doing Catawba grapes back then. And they started to win some of these competitions. So as a result, this was a cash crop because wine was in demand. But then they had to deal with issues of, you know, the normal rot and conditions that happen in a vineyard. And over time they developed like the Norton that was very hardy and resistant to disease. And actually the Herman area was one of those that made its premier location. And that's why it's still considered one of our premier wines here in Herman. Prohibition
as an impact on my family was pretty severe. Prohibition just devastated our families economically, and just, I mean, we had a very large farming operation, we had a winery operation. Farming didn't bring a lot of money, so the wine operation was the main source of income.
It's said that, you know, the wine poured through the streets when it was dumped out, because if you hadn't destroyed your grapes, if you had not destroyed your vineyard production, and there was no compensation for this, it was just eliminated.
One day the government said you were in business, the next day they were ripping your vineyards out and chopping your barrels up, and you were done. So it devastated the economy in the Herman area very significantly.
In the 60s and 70s, as wine became more popular in our current culture, and we appreciated its benefits and its contributions to a meal, I think it started to take off, and I think there are, over 100 wineries now in Missouri. So it has started a resurgence. I think the key thing is many people know Herman as a wine town, and so they've come, when you mention Herman, oh, wineries, or they've been here for Oktoberfest. And that's certainly a very much and a very rich part of our tradition.
I said I wish there was a time machine, because there are times when I would, living on the properties that I do, and you think of how things were done in that time frame. I just wonder what it was like to be back then. I mean, I can only imagine. I mean, they would freak out by today's standards.
To me personally, that's what's so rich, is that that's a part of that contribution to the state economically, but it's also part of their culture, and we sometimes forget that that's why it's here. It's because they integrated that into their lives. Everything from the individual beer gardens that were in St. Louis and the huge breweries that we all know from St. Louis to the various wineries that are along the Missouri, and most all of those are German settlers.
We're ready for the big reveal. Oh, absolutely gorgeous, and it smells amazing. And you want to make sure that they're all open. If any have not been opened, then you just discard them. So just find your favorite bowl and ladle as much as you like. Nobody says you have to share these, even though it's a recipe for 4. I've sprinkled these mussels with some remaining cilantro, and I've paired this with a cabbage and mung bean salad just to act as a counterpoint to the hot, spicy mussels and broth. Be sure to pick up the May issue to read all of the articles that inspired these segments. And of course, I want to thank our sponsors, Kaldi's Coffee. Cheers to Missouri wine.